Good morning. Do you guys know what the medical doctors and IT people have in common? Well, the obvious answer is like they make shitload of money, but that's not what I'm after. Another thing is that we tend to face the problems that we need to somehow investigate. Investigative work, that's something that we do very often. It doesn't matter if you're an infrastructure engineer or if you're a developer, you very often find yourself in a situation where you have to investigate. And funny enough, when I was in high school, I was in the path that would lead me to be medical doctor. And unlike Tobias Welder, I didn't follow this path to go back to IT. I stayed on a different path just because I felt, okay, working with people, who wants that? Today, however, I want to show you some techniques and some things that I want to encourage you to do because unlike doctors, we have tools that allow us to use something more than what we would call printf debugging. If you go to the doctor, he will not stop your processes. He will not put a breakpoint in the middle of your liver. He will have to really ask you a question, figure out what's going on with you, maybe do some tests still while you are running, not in a breakpoint. But we, as developers, because when you write PowerShell code, you're kind of like a developer. And some people will argue that you are already a developer if you don't like to be one. The point is that we have tools and we can do it differently than just by print debugging. And this is the session where I want to show you, first of all, what I mean by print debugging, in case you don't know. I think everybody knows, but just in case, I'm going to cover that part first. And then we will gradually get to the other nice stuff. First slide is about our sponsors. Oh, sorry, wrong direction. Oops. Yeah, sponsors. We are obviously very grateful to sponsors because without them, I'm pretty sure this event would die some time ago because we need their support. And it's just not just about money, right? They just show up here. They give us a sneak peek into their products. And because their products are relevant to us, we might also benefit from it. My company was thinking about using PatchMyPC, but since we want to decouple from SCM, we might not be able to use it. But I can definitely encourage you guys to just take a look and maybe find something that you can take home as well, not just from presentations. A few words about me. You can see my name. I go around Twitter, or formerly known as Twitter, now X, as @BIELAWB. There's a story behind this handle, but I'm not going to go into that because it's not relevant. You can also ask if you have any questions. You can hit me up on email. I work for Optiver, and we're currently hiring here not far from here in Amsterdam. So if you're interested in joining our team, I definitely encourage you to take a look. If you are interested, just let me know. I will share the link with you for the application. I'm also on GitHub, and there you can find me at same handle. I try to be consistent about it. So if you learn it once, there's a benefit to it, same as PowerShell, right? Difference is that obviously benefit of learning my handle is not as good as learning PowerShell. I'm not that full of myself yet. Again, the wrong button. There we go. So, first, as I mentioned, I will try to cover the print debugging. I will try to explain what I mean by that, and I will try to show you why I think it is not the best way to do things. Then we're going to go into interactive debugger because you maybe use the debugger in VS Code or ISE, depending on which tool you prefer to use. What I want to show you is that that's not the only way to be debugging your code in PowerShell. And I will use the commands that exist in PowerShell for debugging because I think those have much more power than just putting breakpoint on a single line, which is what the editors usually offer. Then we're going to go to the debugging remotely when we're going to look into how to debug things when you don't necessarily... Oh, I forgot to start this one. When we don't necessarily have access to the console. Debugging approach changes then, and I want to show you that it's still possible in PowerShell to do that. I added DSC debugging, but that depends on the time and amount of questions. We might not get there. It's just an optional, just in case we still have some time left at the end. So, What is print debugging? Any of you know was familiar with this term, print debugging? Great, like half of the room. So that's good that I actually included this slide. So print debugging is when it happens when instead of actually debugging your code, so putting a breakpoint and analyzing what's happening behind the scenes, you would just echo certain variables or properties or what have you to the screen in order to be able to tell how during the flow of your script function, you name it, the certain things change, which on the surface looks like a good idea. There are two problems with this approach. First one is that you tend to leave those things behind. And it can be quite embarrassing when you just echo the same things over and over and over again. It's like, why do I see this variable all the time? It's like, what the hell is going on here? But the second thing is that it only shows you this specific variable that you thought about echoing, but maybe there's something else going on in the context that will explain better what's going on. So, where's my mouse? There you are. I define here two functions. Both are broken in the same way. One is using print debugging to help me analyze what's going on. The other one is not. Let me just switch slightly so we can see on the side what's going on.
Try and zoom it a bit.
Sorry?
Zoom it a bit.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I can see it.
It's fine in the back. I'm looking at the last row. Yes, yeah, you have plenty of rooms in the front. So let me lower the font so that everybody's forced to sit in the first row. Yes, that's the way to fix the problem. So yeah, let me define those two functions in my session. And now I'm going to run this one. And the expectation is like it's supposed to test if A is B. Obviously, the expectation would be to be false, but it's true. And anybody who written any code in PowerShell probably already noticed what the problem is because you probably did it yourself multiple times. No mystery there. But obviously, normally those things happen not in the script that has, 10 lines. It's usually like much more than that. And then investigating when the things went wrong is definitely much more troublesome. So if I do just print debugging, what I would do is like, okay, it was from A to B, and then I see, oh, suddenly it's from B to B. So I know that something went wrong, but I still have no idea what happened, why suddenly from became B instead of just being A all the time. So that's where we're going to slightly move over to the actual debugging in the PowerShell. So nice thing about the debugger in PowerShell that is built in, I think it was there since version 1, but I'm not going to say with confidence it was there in V1. It was definitely in V2. So it was there, it was with us for a very long time, is that you can set PS breakpoint, which is a command that we would use to set breakpoints in PowerShell. And you can do that with multiple ways. We get to that later. But here I'm just saying, okay, I suspect that something is going on with this variable from, and I want to check if it was actually read at any point in time in my function. So I'm going to set the breakpoint there. I'm going to run the function again. And as you can see, there was no break in my code, which means I didn't read B at any point in time. Which, when you think, okay, I was comparing A to B, like how is it possible that the B was not read? Sorry, from was not read, right? It's like, that should not be the case. Okay, so let's just pretend like, okay, maybe it was written somewhere in my function. So if I run the debugger again, you can see, oh, now I see the problem. It's actually being written here, right? I can see that from is being overwritten by 2, and that's why the result is true instead of being false. Again, example is super simple. Reason is not to show you how to debug your complex 2000 line script, just to give you the idea how those techniques work. Okay, let me close it up a little bit. And we're going to move to the part where I'm going to show you this interactive debugger. So interactive debugger is fine to a certain point, right? You have your function that you run every day, and you did some changes to it, or something in environment changed, and suddenly it doesn't work anymore, and you want to figure out why. It's convenient, but it also like has some limitations. We get to that later. But for now, let's pretend like we can just run the interactive debugger. Let me just get out of this debugger first. Otherwise, we're going to be in trouble. Nope, I don't want to save it. Thank you very much. So, using breakpoints. So I mentioned initially we're going to use breakpoints a lot in this session. And PowerShell has a set of commands that allow you to work with the breakpoints. You can set them, you can see them, you can enable and disable them. Very useful feature, especially when you are in the middle of the debugging session. You think you find the reason why the thing's broken. You change your code and you want to run it without the debugging, so it doesn't stop in every like second line. You can disable all the breakpoints, and then you figure out, okay, it's still not working the way it should, so we can enable them back. So you don't have to like every time add, remove. You can also just disable. And to get to those commands, we get to here. We have, obviously, we can see the syntax for set PS breakpoint. I did mention that when you use this command line utility, you can set a breakpoint in different mothers than just setting it on the line. And you can see it here. There's a parameter set where we set it on a specific line, which is very handy, and sometimes it's enough. Like I would argue that it's very often enough, because usually when you start debugging, it's like you have error in your function script, and you just want to break just before it happens, or the line where the issue happens, so that you can debug the situation at this point in time, right? But it's not always the case, and for that we have this set breakpoint on the command, which is useful when you have situation where the command that you run is failing, and you want to see, okay, how is that thing behaving? So you can set breakpoint on the specific command, and whenever this command will be triggered, the session will break. And the third one is setting breakpoint on variable that I already kind of showcased initially. And those three different parameter sets allow you to work with the debugger in more, I would say, control fashion. You can you have more incentive to select where you're going to stop. And as I mentioned, this is not the only command that we have. So we have a enable breakpoint, which will be responsible for just tweaking them for a moment, like just telling them, okay, please shut up for now. I will just ask you later maybe about stopping, but now just don't do anything. You can get PS breakpoint, which is useful when you want to remove all of them, for example, and also want to see which breakpoints you already have. And there's remove PS breakpoint, which is, well, okay, I'm done with my debugging session. I really want to have a clean environment, so I'm going to just remove this breakpoints that I had. And set PS breakpoint, the one that we used already, is responsible or helping you creating breakpoints when you need them. And there's one thing that PowerShell is missing. How many of you worked with languages where any error, you can just put a breakpoint on any error that happens in your code, and then it just stops? But it's very handy, right? You just have a language feature that just whenever there's a problem, it will stop. It's perfect because you don't have to figure out where the problem is. You can just ask it to stop there, and then you can just investigate. PowerShell doesn't have this feature natively, but I found some hacks. It's not my hack. I'm not going to take credit for it, but I think so far it's working very well for me. And in the blog post, it says that it's actually not really working very well. So I suspect that they improved that in PowerShell 5.1 that I have, because that blog post is from 2017. I think it was still PowerShell 4 or 5 version. So what you can do is set breakpoint on stack trace variable with the mode right. So whenever stack trace is being written to, you can put a breakpoint there. And now if I have non-terminating error, it still doesn't do anything, which, well, it's not ideal. So if I do get process minus ID 13, I think this is favored Jeffrey Snover way to cross our errors, but because you never have process ID 13 on any system, Windows system. It's interesting because I tried that on Linux and it worked, so it's not consistent. So this fails, but nothing happened, right? There was no breakpoint. But the moment I do error action stop, so I force it to be terminating error, you can see, boom, I have my debugging session. which is very nice. Again, I'm not sure how is it 100% proof, this solution, but I think it at least gives us some utility to get this investigation in situations where something went wrong. Okay, let's go back to where I was. And let's just quit this debugging session because I don't want to be in it. So if I have a function that does the same, and I just run it, like let's just define it first. So now if I just run my function getBreak, you can see that same happened, right? It was just stopping in a specific moment in time when the issue appeared. Okay. I think this Q&A slide that's popping up all the time is kind of reminding to myself that if you have a question at any point in time, feel free to raise your hand and ask the question. I try to keep an eye on you guys, but so don't wait for the last like 15 minutes because I think it's better to ask question right away because first of all, it helps me to be in the context of what I'm doing now, and also it helps you to remember what you wanted to ask. If you're going to wait for the last 15 minutes, it may happen that by the time you will forget, okay, I wanted to ask a question, but what was it? Another nice feature, oh yeah, so this is the blog post I mentioned. By the way, all the code will be available to you after the session. I'll put it on GitHub, and then you can just take it from there, including the link to this article. I recommend reading it, even though it's like 7 years old. I still feel like it's pretty relevant. And some of the things they touch on that is actually the next thing I wanted to show you. So nice thing about this breakpoint inside of the command line utility is that you can also specify an action to your breakpoint. Why would you do that? So having a breakpoint anytime a given line or given variable or anything like that is touched may not be enough in some circumstances. So like if you have this variable change like every second line, and you only care about certain situations where it's being changed, you want to specify an action, because then you can say, okay, analyze this variable for me first, and only break if certain conditions are met. Obviously, it doesn't have to be just this variable. It can be anything else in the situation that you are actually working with. So for example, if you see that your error message says that foo is bar, you can say, okay, stop on the foo only when it's bar and when it's being written, right? So you know that, oh, okay, so this is where I write bar to foo. Okay, I should probably use a different example. So, for example, here, I have a breakpoint on a variable foo. Sorry, I'm actually still in the debugging session. It's not smart to create debugging breakpoints inside of the debugging session. It's like Googling Google. It will break the internet. Same here. You don't want that. So let's set breakpoint. I hope you know what? Let's just get PS breakpoint. I mentioned that sometimes you want to clean it up. So move PS breakpoint. It's clean. So now we're just going to create a breakpoint for our variable. So here I'm just again, it's just made up example, but you can probably come up with better examples yourself when you actually work with your own code. So here I'm just saying, okay, only in the moment of the foo is equal to 5 break. Default action is continue, so it will continue unless it is 5. So I'm setting the breakpoint on the variable foo, and now I'm just gonna run it. As you can see, we got foo is 1, foo is 2, 3, 4. It didn't run the foo is 5 because the moment the foo became 5, it's when I broke. And again, this is really nice way to make sure that your breakpoints are as useful for you as possible. It doesn't mean that you have to use this feature, but the fact that you can use it, I think it's a huge benefit, and it beats anything that you can do in like editor by just putting a dot next to the line, right? Because this dot will never be smart enough to tell, okay, this is the action you have to run in order to break. But as you can see, you can benefit from that in editor itself. I'm pretty sure that VS Code will do exactly the same. So it behaves like the debugging functionality doesn't, well, break if you just use your PowerShell smartness for it. You still, you can use, like here is ISE, this gives me debugging session. You can pretty much achieve the same in VS Code. So you make it smaller, but without losing the functionality you would get from just you running that in editor. You can run in the console, and the nice thing about the console functionality is that, which works also in GUI, is that you have some nice commands that allow you to actually browse that. We will get to that in a minute. So let's just close this one again. So here, I had a session on Monday where I was trying to show you how you can have a name collision and how that is bad. And I was saying that I could debug it during this session. And I thought, yeah, that's not going to happen. I'm not going to change my demos just 5 minutes before it starts. But guess what happened? I just changed my demos 5 minutes before it started. So, yeah, see, that's what happens. That's the price you have to pay. But fortunately, I know what I did wrong. So let's just go here, and then it should be all fine. Note to self, make sure you get in the right folder before you run the presentation. So, this is the problem we were facing on. Let me close this one because it's kind of like making the other one not readable anymore. So this was the issue we were facing. My function was generally, I was passing the switch as a parameter to it, right? And then when I tried to print it out, instead of getting my switch name, I was getting something weird. The reason for that is clear to me, but if you would face that yourself for the first time, it might not be. And that's where something like debugger helps. So in this case, it feels like this $switch variable is being read, and it's the value of that one is not exactly what you would expect to be, right? So I'm going to set a breakpoint on this module with this variable switch, and I say, give me anything when the mode is read for this one. And if I run it again, what will happen is that, okay, it's first read when the function is being called, which makes sense, right? When your function is being called, you read the whatever the user provided to you. So I don't care about this part. This one should be fine. I can actually see here, and like I see storage actually gives you this nice place where you can see where is the switch variable. Yeah, so you can see here the value of the switch is actually correct, right? It's exactly what I would expect to be, and now I can continue. Next time it's being read is when I create this custom object, the one that you see in the output, and now I can see, oh, it's something else. So let's see what switch is currently. Oh, it does have this nice current variable, which is enabled. So what happened is that I'm doing it inside of the switch statement, where $switch is special variable and overrides my variable. Therefore, I get different result. But now I can actually see, okay, in this context, $switch is not exactly what I would expect it to be, right? So let's go back. Switch. So I can switch move next, for example, but that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to just get the string value of switch. Okay. Next thing I want to show you is something that may be confusing at first, and it was definitely confusing for me when I started working with it, is the things that you can do when you want to debug something remotely. Like, imagine you have your schedule task, or you have some kind of like automation framework that uses PowerShell under the hood, just runs PowerShell, and you can potentially see what's going on only if you write it to like text file or event log. There's no console to speak of. Therefore, you cannot see the behavior of your code. One of the examples that we definitely had in our organization was definitely like scheduled tasks, because scheduled tasks, when they fail and they run PowerShell, you will get the process exited with code 1. Great. That's exactly what I needed to know to figure out what's going on. So we started actually, what we started to do is write to event log like during the process, so printf debugging to event log, which is great, especially considering that those scheduled tasks sometimes run at 3 a.m. in the morning. and I don't necessarily want to sit in front of console and run it then, right? But if you have a situation where you have those automation going on and on and on, let's say you have PowerShell Universal or any other platform that kind of like converts your REST API codes into PowerShell code, and you want to see how this PowerShell code behaves, well, then it's being able to kind of like go inside of this process and see what PowerShell code is running there is super handy. So the next thing we want to do is we're going to enter PS host. Oops, sorry, this one. This is something that was added, I believe, in PowerShell 5. Don't quote me on this one. It's a really nice functionality that were introduced to allow us to primarily debug DSC, but that's not the only use case for that one at all. And that's why I put the DSC on the side, because not everybody is using DSC, but I'm pretty sure that most of you are using PowerShell in some kind of automation platform. Let it be scheduled tasks, let it be some kind of like third-party tool that just runs PowerShell as a run books to do some things, IQ service, you name it. You do want to be able to hook yourself into this session and just see what's going on inside of it. So let's first go to my server, because I don't want to do that on my primary machine. I have a scheduled task named task. Yes, I know my invention when it comes to names is terrible, but as you know, naming is one of the hardest things in IT, and I suck at it. So we have actions. As you can see, this scheduled task, what it will do is going to run a very important function, invoke debug script. Sorry. Let's look at the invoke debug just to understand what's going on there. So the first statement you see here is start sleep section 60, and then we have some functions and we just run them. And so as you can see, probably not what you're going to run as scheduled task in your organization, because I don't think it is the point. But it will help us to also get into like how debugger behaves when it comes to certain commands that we have for it. So let's just close that one. We don't want to see it too much. And now I'm going to see who runs this scheduled task. So you can see this one is actually running as something that looks like a computer name, but it's not. What it really is group managed service account, which is a really nice thing about scheduled tasks, that you can use group managed service accounts for them, because as you know, then the passwords are not involved in using this, and it makes it slightly more secure. And for example, when we define those scheduled tasks with this GMSA and we have our DSC to deploy it, we don't have to put any plain text passwords anywhere, which is already a huge win. Even if you encrypt the whole thing everywhere, you're always going to put this password, the plain text password, somewhere. With GMSA, you don't have to do that at all. So now we're going to start the scheduled task. And commands to actually look at those different PowerShell processes that are running right now on this other box. This is my VM that I have here, is get PS host process info. Now, the question is like, which one is mine, right? Which one I actually want to see? And the way I usually approach that is I just ask get some instance with class win52 process, because that one has really nice way to show you what actually is being run. And you can see the first one is just running some kind of like SC config logon. You know, I think it's Server 22 has this like, and Server Core version of it has this like this UI where you have like console approach to setting up things. And the other one looks like ours, right? So now I'm going to just grab this one, very specific, and we're going to enter into that. And now I can just say, okay, who am I? As you can see, now I'm actually impersonating the other user. Important to remember that this technique, if you made this GMSA too powerful, it might be problematic. Because now being administrator on this box, I can just enter this process and start acting as this account, which may be scary. Now, inside of this process, we have 2 run spaces. And now another question is like, which one is which? Which one is the one I want to see? So the easy way to tell is that the one that is busy is probably not the one that you want to see. Why? Because when you were running get run space, it became busy by you running get run space. So if it's busy, probably that's the one where you were running get run space. I don't think everybody will follow that, but just trust me. If you see busy, not yours. Probably not the one that you want to see. So let's try to debug then. And what PowerShell will tell you, okay, you are trying to debug your own session. That's not what debug run space is for. Debug run space command is actually useful to debug another run space, not your own. So it will just tell you, so even if you hit wrong one first, don't worry, PowerShell will tell you that you're not doing the right thing. And now, unfortunately, I couldn't figure out the way to change the colors here, so let me just select that so you can actually read it. Oh. I'm wondering if the process didn't finish already. Maybe I was just speaking too long. Let me just verify that very quick. Because I see that's get schedule task. Task name task. No, still running. Okay. So let's go back here. I'm not sure why it's showing this twice. Actually, it's what it should do. It's just show it once. And the reason for that is, remember at first I had start sleep seconds 60, sorry. So this is PowerShell debugger that you are running here. PowerShell debugger can debug only PowerShell code. When start sleep starts, it's not PowerShell anymore that runs in the runtime, right? It's just this whole managed code that's behind the start sleep, there's run. And I cannot debug that one at all in my PowerShell debugger. Would expect it to stop eventually. Clearly not the case. Let me just start over. That's the beauty about debugging. You have to be acceptable for losses. So let's just get schedule task, task name task. I'll just stop that one and just try again. So let's start schedule task. Let's go maybe go here. So I'm just gonna do the two things I definitely need. So I only need that one. I need to know which process I want to enter. And let's enter the process and try to debug run space number 1. And let's let it just get there. Obviously, it was working fine in the hotel. It was like two hours ago.
Make a sacrifice.
Yes. Yeah, I didn't sacrifice the artificial lamp to get to work. But what will happen, trust me, is that we'll get to the point where we will see this invoke the poke script running, and we will be able to investigate the lines inside of it. That's the idea. If it will fail remotely, I'll just try to run the script manually, and then we're just gonna debug it, because that's not the only thing I wanted to show you in this demo. So yeah, it's for some reason it just comes back to this one again. Whereas I was expecting something completely different. Okay, let's not wait for it. Let's fix it. So, I'm going to set PS breakpoint on the first line of the script. I'm just going to run it. Trust me, this would work normally. Demo gods. And it will allow us to just go into this process and just investigate the process, the script as it's running. Now I'm going to just pretend like I'm doing that there. So let's just run the script. Okay, something really went wrong. Just really get that. You can also try that from the PowerShell itself. So set PS breakpoint. Yes.
You tried setting it off and on again.
Yeah, probably a good idea. Let's verify that we don't have any breakpoints here. Set PS breakpoint. And script is ctemp. Invoke the poke. Yep. And line is 1. And ctemp. Okay. Thank God. Okay. So what I wanted to show you here, actually, is not the actual script because we already seen it. We already know that's all fine about that. But when you start debugging interactively, you get those multiple commands. And some of them may be confusing at first. I'm sure that they were confusing for me when I started. So first of all, we have step into, step over, step out. The difference between them is maybe not clear at first. But if you look at the code, which is, we can run just list to see like where we are. We have few functions here and they are nested. So the moment you start stepping into, you will just step into those nested functions. If you step over, you will step to the next PowerShell line, but skipping anything that calls into different scope. So anything that generates a scope will be just kind of like step out over, right? And step out is like when you go nested to those things, eventually you want to get out of them. And that's happened to me very often. Like when I start debugging and suddenly I'm ending up in some like Microsoft module, like get scheduled task, for example. I don't want to see that code, right? I want to see my code. I don't want to see their code so much. So let's just step into. And the first thing we'll do, it will wait for those 60 seconds. I probably should change that before we started the second part. Any questions, by the way? Because we have, like, I think we reached already the question Q&A part. So if you have any questions, I should not be refusing your ability to ask them. So as I mentioned, right now, it looks like the debugger is completely bunkers, right? It doesn't do anything. And that's the reason for that is that I'm not able to debug, at least not with this debugger. I'm not able to debug the managed code that runs inside of the start sleep. So start sleep has to finish first for me to be able to stop talking and start showing you some things. In essence, you have to remember that, okay, when I'm debugging my code, it's only my code, and any other PowerShell code that I face is the one that I can debug. There are ways to debug also the .NET code, but that would not be the part of the session. So now I got to this part where I'm in for each loop, because obviously the definitions of functions are not interesting at all, so the PowerShell will not stop there. It stops at the for each loop, and it now goes to this part where we can actually just step again into. So as you can see, it actually started with this whole for each. With the statement 1 to 1000, right? So it evaluated that. I was stopped in this part. Now I'm just kind of going one step farther. So now I'm just in item loop. And now I just see item. So I'm basically, if I list again, I can see that I'm on line 12, right? And now if I step into again, by the way, you can also you can type step into, that works. You can also, if you already want to step into again, you don't have to type the command again. You can just press enter, and PowerShell by default will just run the same command again. So now if we list again, we are now in the beginning of the definition of this invoke first level. So if I step into again, I'm going to go to the invoke second level, which is not very clear here, but let's list it. So as you can see, okay, step into. So now I'm invoke second level, I'm into definition. So I mentioned that we can stop over and we can step out. So here I probably want to step out because I don't care about definition of this function at all. So I can just say step out and I immediately go out of this function and I can just move on. and now I'm just out of the whole session because I stepped out twice. So I stepped out from my script. So using those commands will allow you to, whenever you start debugging session, it would allow you to just consciously choose where you want to go with your code. So you don't have to like step through like 3,000 lines PowerShell module from Microsoft just to get to your own code. You can always step out from this mayhem and just go back to your nice and clean code, right? Same applies to any other situation where you are debugging. You can always choose, but you have to choose wisely, because if you choose step out when you actually want to step next, it might mean that you have to start your debugging session from the scratch, right? If you just went too far and suddenly you are out of your debugging session and you didn't figure out what the hell went wrong. Do we have any questions? Okay, we have 4 minutes left, so I'm just gonna quickly show you the DSC debugging. So again, I think that was the main reason why we got this like enter PS host functionality. And I'm gonna just show you the like. Oh yeah, there's a question. Sorry. So I'm just gonna show you like the default way to approach DSC debugging. I'm afraid we won't have time for the second part, where I want to show you that you can pretty much do the same yourself. So the way that you would debug your DSC is that you have this ability to enable DSC debug. I'm going to skip all those things because they are not really that important. So let's go here. I'm already in this PS session, right? So let me just quit from this debugging session. So if I go like get DSC local configuration manager, I think I already enabled debug mode. So you can see if I enable DSC debug, because that's the command you would run to enable DSC debug. That's the command you would run to enable it. And for some reason they have switched, but it's mandatory. Don't ask me why. You can also, obviously, once you are done, you can disable DSC debug. And you don't want to tap complete until you get that. So that's what happens if you do that, is now that debug mode of your local configuration manager is now none. And once we enable it back, and we're trying to run DSC, so let's start DSC configuration, you will see that the PowerShell will immediately tell you what you have to do. Some of those things will not work. Like, for example, it says enter PS session, computer name DC1. This is lab. I'm not member of this domain, so my computer will not resolve the DSCO name, so I have to do it differently. But other commands here, you see, like it's the ID of the host that I need to enter and the run space I need to debug. Those things are absolutely correct. So if I go back here and go back to my session, like not this session, but PowerShell session. Okay, so now I'm on this remote host. So now I can just pick those lines, right? So enter PS host process, and ID will be 3396. It's nothing about this command that they try to be helpful, so they will tap complete all the process IDs that you want. Important thing here is that app domain is not default, therefore you have to specify. So app domain name is this DSC. I'm not going to select it because I'm not crazy. I'm not going to try to rate it myself. Because what could possibly go wrong if I do that? Okay. So now I'm in the process, and now it tells me to debug run space ID 4. Debug run space. If only I could type ID 4, right? It's clearly something happened with the ISC. Let me just restart it. Because now it's just not behaving the way it should. Ooh, I just need one. Thank you very much. So, enter. Okay, and now just I should have it here with the wrong ID of the process, but at least I don't have to type type domain again, which is, as I mentioned, bad idea. 3396 and debug run space ID 4. Okay, that's what I was expecting. So it looks like it's actually already in my resource. This is not what I wanted. So let's just get out of this one and let's start again. But generally speaking, what I wanted to show you is that initially I have the two resources in DSC. One was talking to the schedule task, which is built by Microsoft. I'm not going to debug that one. Another one was my own, and that's the one I actually wanted to see. So I could step out from the first one, and it would immediately move to the other one. Again, didn't sacrifice enough lamps. So let's just do it again. Okay, same process, different run space, but just fine. So, okay, run space. You can see that it's run space 19 that is mentioning here. It's one of the run spaces I have. And that one actually says, you can see here, it's in Breakpoint, right? So that's like if you just go to the process, you don't even have to remember the ID or read it. You can just get the run space, debug run space, the one that is in Breakpoint. Debug run space minus ID 19. And now you can see what I meant, right? So right now we are in the schedule task PSM1, which is just the code behind the DSC resource for the schedule tasks. So I think that one works fine. I don't want to see that one. So I'm going to step out from this one. And now it went back to my resource. And we are very, very much over time. I see already my friend Bjorn in the back, so he probably wants to set him up. So thank you very much for joining. Sorry for all the demos that failed. It was kind of expected because debugging session, like what did you wanted to see? So thank you very much.